Thank you everyone for coming tonight. LizAnne, are you ready?
I am. I just shut the door.
All right, fantastic. My guest tonight is LizAnne Jensen of the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County. And I'll just say, I think we all know why we're here. Our county is still living through the largest natural disaster we've seen since the earthquake, and arguably it's greater than the earthquake of '89. And there was a quarter of our, actually a third of our county evacuated, and many more of us who didn't actually have to evacuate were in fear of evacuating and know that it could happen to us as well. Santa Cruz County actually has the most homes in the Wildland Urban Interface. That's the highest risk areas for wildfire of any place in the whole state. So we really need to make sure we're prepared for the next events. Of course, we're also only at the beginning of fire season now, and I wanted to bring LizAnne here tonight because I think her information she has is so incredibly relevant, and I really like her presentation. It's really a fabulous how-to guide, and I hope that you all walk away tonight with a very clear sense of what you can do tomorrow, this weekend, to make your home safer from wildfire. So, as I said, my guest tonight is LizAnne Jensen. She's lived through 3 evacuations of your home. Is that right, LizAnne?
That's correct.
That's impressive. And of course, and your home today, it's up in Bonny Doon, right in the middle of the burn zone, and yet your home didn't burn down. So we are all dying to know how you did it. And I just want to say one other thing, because I looked at this earlier. It's so cool. So you're in your professional life, you're the co-owner of West Coast Weather Vanes. Is that right? Yeah, I looked at your site. You know, I never thought I wanted a weather vane until I saw your site. They are gorgeous. If for those of you sitting at home, just Google West Coast Weather Vanes, and I'm assure you're going to see a weather vane that interests you. Of course, your waiting list is a year, so if you're going to have to get your custom order in now for next Christmas of 2021. In any case, LizAnne, thank you so much for coming tonight. You have such important and timely information to share. We're going to let you do your presentation. We're going to save plenty of time for questions, and I'm here to be able to answer questions related to general, more broader policy related items within the county, and LizAnne will be able to field questions directly to the How To It guide. So you can ask questions in the Q&A function in Zoom that's available at the bottom of your screen. We also have a number of questions that were emailed in here tonight. So feel free at any time during the presentation to enter your question, and we'll get to them during the Q&A at the end. And Christina, who is also helping to host the call, our fabulous campaign coordinator, will help us with those questions. So that's enough from me. LizAnne, please take it away.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm here to share hard-learned information that I've gotten over the years. My first experience with evacuation was in 2008 during the Martin fire, which got within a quarter mile of my home. And at that time, I was just a person going about my business. And when it first happened, I didn't know what to do. I ran from room to room saying, oh, I should get this, oh, I should get that. And I wasted a lot of time and just really didn't know what to do. And that really started me on my journey towards working with the Fire Safe Council and becoming better prepared to respond to wildfires. One thing that I think Christina is going to do, if you're interested, is I wrote up a brief evacuation guide, like how to prepare and stage yourself when you do have to evacuate, and how to kind of prepare in advance for that. So I think she has that available and can email it out to people who are interested after the presentation. So without further ado, I'll get started on the presentation. The first thing is there are really three ways that a house can burn from a wildfire. And probably the most common way is from embers and firebrand. And the picture you see in the upper left-hand corner is actually a large burn facility. It's a huge warehouse. They actually build houses in it, test different kind of materials, and they have blowers that send embers up against the building, and they study the effects. So there's quite a bit of scientific research on things you can do to harden your home that's based on evidential process. The second way that homes can catch on fire is flame contact. And that is if a flaming tree hits your house, if you leave a broom out on your front porch, or a stack of newspapers, those catch on fire up to your house. Those can catch your house on fires. And the last method is radiant heat. And that is typically when a single family dwelling or building catches on fire, it puts out so much heat that houses right up near it will catch fire just from the radiant heat. Probably the most common way homes catch fire is the first one, embers and firebrands. In the case of the fire we just experienced, we were watching singed and blackened leaves fall down in our yard, and those were a quarter of a mile ahead of the actual fire itself, and several of those did catch on fire in small spot fires on our property, which we were able to put out. But that is by far the most common way fires affect homes in the wildland urban interface. And by the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be able to figure out why this house burned. As you look at it, you can see it's got a lot of green belt. There's green lawns all around it. There's a lot of open space where the flame lengths don't get that high. So why did this house actually burn? And we'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So we have been working at our house for about 12 years now, slowly making progress and working on the defensibility of our home, which we now feel is pretty good. And it can seem an overwhelming task, and really the easiest way to start this project is the 0 zone. And that is the 5 feet immediately surrounding your house. You can have clear space like we saw in the previous photo all around it. But if you have shrubs or a wood stack or something in that 0 zone and embers fly into that, that's going to set your house on fire. So the first thing you're going to want to do is walk around your house and look at the 0 zone. And we'll go into more detail on this later on. The next zone is zone 1, which is from 5 feet to 30 feet out from your house. And then zone 2 is 30 to 100 feet out from your house. And then zone 4 is actually the streets in and out of your neighborhood. But really what we're going to focus on tonight is zone 0. And in your zone 0, your number 1 priority is going to be your roof. It's the largest surface on your home, and especially where there's complex roof lines coming together, those are the areas you're going to watch. And those can be things like your dormer windows, where skylights are, and your gutter. So those are all particular areas where flaming embers come in, and you have leaf duff in the crevices around your complex roof edges or leaf duff in your gutter that's most likely the place that will start your house on fire. Other things on the roof are your vents should be your second priority, and there are roof vents. We'll look at those in a little more detail. There are gable end vents, there are under the eave vents, and then your foundation vents. And those you're going to want to screen properly to make sure embers don't get through. So first priority, look at your roof. Second priority is look at your vents. So looking a little bit more about the points of interest, points of entry, I talked about the complex roof edges. You could have a Class A roof, which is the best roofing you can have for fire. But if it goes up against a wood dormer and you have leaf stuff in there, that's going to be a place that can catch your house on fire. In the middle picture, you see, this is actually in that warehouse where they were testing different types of rain gutters. On the farthest away from us portion of the roof, those are metal gutters, which don't burn, but if you have leaf stuff or twigs in that, they can actually just sit there and catch your roof on fire there. The gutter closest to us is a plastic gutter, and as you can see, they will melt and fall off, but if you have vegetation down on the ground below that, that falling, flaming gutter is going to catch that on fire, which again puts fire right up against your house, which is what you don't want. The third image shows fence to house contact. And if you have wooden fencing or gates or other things that are directly up to your house, those can catch fire more easily than your house itself. But if they're connected, they can actually then catch your house on fire. The two pictures at the bottom, one shows a gable end vent, and in those vents, you're going to want to have 1/8 inch screening or less. It's usually pretty inexpensive to replace those, but as you can see, embers can blow through those, and especially if you have stuff stored in your attic, they can catch that on fire, and then you have fire inside your house. And the bottom picture shows your foundation vents, and again, if they're not screened at 1/8 inch, you can get a fair number of embers in that are big enough to actually set things on fire there. And this is what I was talking about. We actually had a whole bunch of paper stored in our attic area. We have since got boxes and actual containers, and all our flammable materials are now labeled and stored in those containers. The embers are pretty small at the 1/4 inch size, so bouncing against something plastic probably wouldn't catch it, but if it lands on a stack of old papers or photos, that can actually set your attic on fire. This is just showing some of the different kind of roof vents. California has a guide for fire safe construction. It's called California's Chapter 7A. And they actually test and list approved siding, roofing, vents, windows, other kinds of things. It's a great source if you're rebuilding or if you're looking to harden your home. You can go there and look at different kinds of things. But I won't go into detail about these different kind of vents in too much detail, but the one in the upper right corner is called an intumescent honeycomb screen. And what it has is, if embers get in there, there's this honeycomb surface behind it, which actually will melt if it gets too hot and seal the vent. When the fire is over, you have to replace them, but they do close up with heat and embers touching them. The middle one is a baffle one, which means embers have to thread a baffle to get in. And then there's several other kinds, but those two are pretty common and are most in use. But again, 1/8 inch screening is really critical. This is showing a roof vent that it helps your house breathe. You have to have it so that moisture has a way to escape your house. So you do need these vents, but it's a great place for pine needles or leaves to accumulate. And if embers land on these, they can go right in through your roof vents. So if we have a red flag warning, doesn't mean there's a fire coming, but it's a red flag warning, I go up and sweep off our roof. It's one that we can get up on and do that. But again, your roof is the most likely point of entry, so good roof maintenance can really help save your home. Skylights. Many of us live in the redwoods, and can you imagine embers landing on any of these roofs and the effect it might have? The flat style skylight are usually glass, and those you can get fire safe glass put in there. We just did that this year. We had the plastic dome like skylights on our house, but we replaced them with double pane. But even the double pane, if you have embers sitting on top of there and starting fires, it can crack the glass, and you don't want that. The domed ones are better in that dust slides off them, but again, it slides down, and at that intersection of the complex roofing line, you don't want accumulation of duff or other material in that area. Another important piece of your roofing, and if you've had your roofing professionally installed, you probably have this, but it's the metal drip edge. And what it is, it's just a little piece of flashing that fits in your gutter and under your roof. So if you have leaves in your gutter, without that flashing, it can wick in under your roofing and start your roof on fire. These again are pretty inexpensive. If you don't have them, it's a good thing to do. So, you know, these are all things that are not expensive like putting on a new roof, but can really help protect your home for relatively low cost. Here is a case in point. This is a metal roof, which should be a strong roof for fire protection. But again, the gutters had material in them, and the fire was able to wick in under that metal roof and actually start this house on fire. So, you know, again, they're little things, but they can make all the difference in whether your roof can protect your home or not. This photo we call the sunset magazine gardening technique, where you have shrubbery right up against your house to anchor it to the landscape. And again, imagine embers blowing in and catching those bushes right under your windows on fire. You can do landscaping around your house, but you just want to offset it about at least 5 feet from the house. And it can be done in a way that's creative. And if you do want vegetation kind of to soften the lines of your house, put the low vegetation in and the taller vegetation further away from your house. But the minimum you want is 5 feet, because you can have a great roof, you can have double pane windows, but if embers get into this landscaping right up against your house, again, you've got a problem. This is from the Paradise Fire. You can see the size of the embers in the person's hand. When I went back home, I found an ember that was, it was a piece of redwood that was 4 inches. It had hollowed out inside, but it had drifted down into our yard. So embers can be quite big. And you can see that's a patio cushion. You can see all the little embers that hit it. And on this house, you can see that embers got into the grass is still green, but the embers got into the vegetation that was right up against the house. You can't see it in this photo, but the window, it was fortunately double pane, but the outer pane of glass was cracked on that. Again, potentially allowing fire to get into your house. And here's a picture. You can see the crack in the window. It's a slightly different view, but that's not a very big bush right there, but the heat from it was enough to crack the window on that home. People talk about fire-resistant plants, and some are better than others, but you can see that even cactus will burn if the heat is intense enough. So, you know, this would probably more likely catch with a firewall coming through, but embers are the most likely way it's going to get into the vegetation. So, you know, you want to be really careful about what you plant right up close to your house. So here's an example. This is a wood shingle house, which is a little bit scary when you live in fire country, but they have done a good job creating landscaping, creating clearance around their house. You can see the bush between the house and the garage has actually been limbed up, so low blowing embers are less likely to catch it. Their roof is quite clean, but you know, this is an example of a house that has a better chance of surviving than with vegetation right up against it. You can also make a interesting and nice landscaping in that section right around your house. So you can be creative in the way you landscape in that area and still make it look attractive. Okay, now we're moving down the house, down the siding and the walls. We've talked about vegetation up close to your house. There is also, your house should have a metal drip edge down at the bottom. It's down between the foundation and the siding on your house. Again, if you have leaves blow in, they catch fire, they drift up. If you don't have that metal drip edge there, they can insinuate themselves into the siding and again start your house on fire. So again, it's a pretty cheap solution, but it is a really important one for making your home safer. And here, if you have places around your home, go and look after a wind and see where leaves accumulate, because that is where embers are going to accumulate by your house. So any place that you see leaf accumulation, that's a place to look at for fire vulnerability. And so the picture on the right shows somebody who made a little bit of an interesting landscaping to protect a corner where, you know, they might have that kind of danger. And that drip edge I was talking about would be right where the wood siding comes down and meets the concrete foundation. That little drip edge can keep fire from wicking up through your siding on your house. And what firefighters often call this kind of fencing is kindling. It catches fire very easily. If you have any kind of lath attached to your home or any structures you value, you're going to want to replace it because it catches fire really easily. And if you have any dry grasses down there or leaves, it's probably going to catch fire. And if it's attached to one of your structures, it's going to move right over and attack your structures as well. And this is just a photo of that happening. You know, if that fence hadn't been attached to the house and they had a good 5-foot clearance around it, it might not have caught the house on fire. So this is a good solution for a gate. You can see that they do have wooden fencing, but the wooden fencing is separated from the house by a metal gate. So this would be more defensible than if you had a wooden gate going right up to your house. And again, that's something, you know, this is a 5-10-year plan of making these kind of changes around your home. And you should, you know, walk around and assess it and kind of prioritize the things you want to do first and things you want to do later as you have time and can afford to do them. Okay, well, here I think you can see what the problem is with this. You really do not, even though it's convenient, you do not want to store burnable materials under decks or foundations or any place like that. That's an area you really want to keep clear because that's where embers are going to go. And you can see that the fellow in the picture on the right has a really good defensible space under his decking. But the thing you want to do is when those red flag warnings happen, you would want to walk under here and look for leaf accumulation or things that had, you know, gotten in under there over time and rake those out of there, you know, just in preparation. The fire may never come, but when it's a red flag warning, that's when you want to go around your house and look for vulnerable spots. And, you know, here you can see fire. Fire can move along the ground, but if it's hot and intense enough and it moves up into the trees, you know, that's that 5-foot clearance around your house is going to help. But in some cases, you can do everything right. And if it's a firestorm coming through, your house would have a better chance. But, you know, there's some fires that come through that, you know, it can be tough to save them. But in many cases, people up in Bonny Doon that I know that their houses were saved, they had done the defensible work around their house. So now we're going to spend a little time on this page. And I want you, based on the conversation we've had, to take a look at this house and look at what you might see as things this homeowner could do to make their home safer. And if you jot them down, we don't really have a way to do an interaction right here like we would in a live presentation, but I'll come back through these and kind of talk about things that I see that they could do. But I'll give you a couple minutes right now to just look at this and think what things this homeowner might do to make their house safer. Okay, and so we'll move on to the next one. This is another home, and if you take a look at around, you can see maybe things that they've done well and things they could make improvements on. Give you just a couple minutes to look at this. Okay. Okay, here is another house, and you can kind of take a look at it, and based on what we've talked about, what would you think this homeowner should do to make their home safer? Okay. And here's another example. And what would you say, what advice would you give this homeowner on things they could do to make their home safer? Okay, and then here we have this home. Okay. And last, I think this is my last one. What would you say this homeowner has done right, and what more could they do? And just a little more information. Many of us live up in the mountains, and fire does tend to go uphill, and it can go uphill really quickly. So when you live on a slope, you do, the standard if you're on horizontal ground is you might want your shrubbery, if it's 2 feet tall, 8 feet apart. But if you're on a vertical incline, you would want to stretch out that distance. And again, you can see in the other illustration, the more slope you have, the further you want to space your plants apart. Okay, and let's see. So right now we'll go back and we'll talk a little bit about these homes. The things that I see on this home that this homeowner could do is, first thing I would do is remove that lath under their deck. You could put a metal screen along there, etc. If you want to, keep it, that would help embers from blowing in under the deck, but the lath should definitely go. It looks to me like over on the left-hand side, they have rosemary. And rosemary is an oily, more fragrant plant. And it can get a very woody infrastructure inside it and just be green on the outside. It also catches fire pretty easily, any of the aromatic, oily type plants. So I would take out all that rosemary. They have limbed up the oak trees on their house. They're sprouting again, and eventually you might want to trim those up. And it looks like they have blankets or something hanging over the deck. That might just be temporary, but again, keeping that clear. Also, having metal patio furniture rather than wooden patio furniture. And if you have cushions, you could take those inside if there was a fire warning so that the embers didn't get on those. And the trees, there's pretty dense vegetation behind the house, which could be thinned. Back when the Amu Mutsun people were managing the forests of this area, tree density on average through tree ring circle studies was about 10 trees per acre. And now it's more like 80 to 100 trees per acre. So especially in times of drought, you have more trees trying to compete for scarce water supplies. It makes all the trees weaker and more susceptible to disease, insects, and catching fire if they're really dry. So thinning the trees and leaving shade so that bunch of undergrowth doesn't sprout up actually can help make the forest healthier, provide grazing land for deer and other small creatures, and make it safer for your home as well. This house actually belongs to a friend of mine who lives in Bonny Doon. And they supplied this photo, and based on input, they had done a pretty good job. They had pretty good clearance around their house from vegetation, but they have since moved their wood pile and moved everything away. And fire burned right up to their house. It burned, they're on a steep slope, and it burned the slope all the way up to the edge of their deck, and their house did survive. So they only had to do a few small things to make their house better able to survive. And even though it's wood decking, wood siding, it did survive the fire that just went through the Bonny Doon area. On this house, probably your best decision would be to remove that tree. But if you couldn't bear to move it, to limit up 15 or 20 feet high to it's lying right on the roof and in the gutter. You can also see, if you look at the gutter that's in the front, that it's draining down the side of the house. That's probably an indication that the whole gutter is clogged with debris and leaves. So you would want to clean that out. And then they have the plant right in front of their window, which is, if it's up against stucco, it's a little better, but you definitely don't want vegetation right in front of your windows. So those would be things this homeowner could do to improve the safety of their home. This home here is pretty good. It's stucco. It's it's made of fire-resistant materials, but it is right at the entry of a ravine, and fire rushes up ravines like this. They're called fire alleys. So they would want to, as we talked about on a slope, you want less vegetation. You want it further spaced apart. So they would want to reduce that vegetation in that gully. They also have complex roof angles, so they would want to check to make sure there wasn't debris on those. And on the left side of the house, they have vegetation right up to the house. So these people have quite a bit of work to do. Their house is of a design that's defensible, but they need to do quite a bit of clearing around it to make it safer. This home is like a lot of homes in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Lots of my friends have homes like this, and these people have a lot of work to do. I mean, they could weed and clear around their house. They have wooden fencing and decking. They could limb up or thin some of the trees around their house to make it safer. And I did see homes, that were of this vintage that made it through the fire because they had good defensible space around it. These people have done part of it really well. They've created a lot of defensible space in the 30 to 100 foot zone around their house. But if you look up closely, they have vegetation right up against the house. And that's where the true vulnerability is. If embers blow in, they could skip right over this nicely fire-escaped landscaping and still catch the house on fire. And do you remember that picture that I showed you right at the beginning of the house that burned down that had all the defensible space around it? I think it was a situation like this where they had vegetation right up close to their home. And the one other thing, this is a photo from Coffee Park, which was an area up in the Santa Rosa Tubbs fire that burned. I actually toured this area. And one complication is if homes are within 5 or 10 feet of each other, the defensible space between them needs to be maintained really clearly. But when a house catches fire, it is throwing off so much heat that it is easy for a house next to it to catch fire. So in a situation like this, in addition to doing the defensible space in the 5 foot zone around the house, you would want to look as a community as a way to put green belt around this to try and avoid fire getting into this neighborhood at all, because it is, once it gets into a neighborhood, it's tough to stop them because the fire is burning so intensely. So ways that communities, in addition to doing the work around your own home, it's important for your neighborhood to do the work. Our neighborhood has 39 homes, and vegetation in one of the homes caught fire. The house was defended, but 2 years ago as a neighborhood, we had cleared back all the vegetation on either side of the road. And driving through Bonny Doon to my home after the fire, I saw that many of the areas where the fire burned, it burned right up to the road and it stopped. There were a couple places where it slopped over on the other side, but there were large stretches where the road actually stopped the fire. So we have a little private road. It's a one-lane road, but we have cleared back about 10 feet on either side of it. And that is a really good project that you as a neighborhood can do to not only aid you in getting out and allowing large fire trucks to come in. If they see an enclosed little road, they won't go in it. They need to know that they have enough space around their fire truck to make it safe for them to defend your homes. And FireWise is a group of neighbors coming together. You know, individuals, you can educate your individual neighbors on things they can do. In this case, this is an elderly man, and the neighbors came in and are helping him around his house. You can also do work parties in your neighborhood to do clearing alongside your road, or you may chip in together and hire somebody to come in and do it professionally for you. It all depends. But FireWise USA provides a structure for neighborhoods to organize, and it gives you the kind of tasks you want to do. You want to do an educational event to make your neighbors aware of it, and you set up a 5-year plan in your neighborhood to make it safer. And what's great is if you do this work, you can apply to FireWise USA, and you can become a FireWise certified community. Some insurance companies actually weigh that in. I know many of us have experienced insurance cancellations, and if neighborhoods have done the work to make it safe, it makes it safer for the insurers to insure your home. So getting that FireWise certification can help you. It also makes firefighters know that it's an area. If they're coming in, like we had firefighters from LA, San Luis Obispo, all over the place. And if they see that a community's FireWise, they know that work has been done in that neighborhood and it's going to be easier to defend. And it's a great opportunity to get kids involved and learning participatory actions that you can do as a neighborhood. It's empowering. Some kids get scared, and this is a way of making them feel involved and proactive and helping their community become safer. So the last thing I just want to cover is this document. You can go to the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County website and download this. It prints out as 3 pages. And I think this is a really important document, so I'm just going to spend a little time on it to familiarize you with it. This, on the right-hand side, this is a piece you can cut off and tape to your door as you evacuate. It gives your name, the residence location, because the firefighters are making notes about which houses they're defending and what actions they're taking. So putting your address on there is helpful. You can also list phone numbers and an email. We had one person get a note that they had fed and watered their chickens while they were defending their house. But this gives them an idea how to get a hold of you if they have a question about your propane tank, if they can reach out. It gives them information to do that. It also gives you a place to list the total number of residents on the property, and there's a place to put the date and time you evacuated and the names of the people who left. If some people stay to defend, which is not encouraged, list those names of the people who are staying to defend, total number of pets, pets evacuated, pets left behind. In our neighborhood, we had 8 residents who stayed to defend, while in our 39 home neighborhood. And after the most intense part of the fire occurred, they were going around and feeding koi in ponds, feeding turtles, taking care of other things. So leaving this information on the door can be helpful to people who might be in your neighborhood who could help. Also important is to put your intended evacuation destination. If firefighters or neighbors are trying to get a hold of you, they know where to find you and how to get a hold of you. And then the last section is if you have any kind of information that might be relevant to somebody trying to defend your home, there's a place for you to put that. You can pre-fill out parts of this, but if you are evacuating and you have the time and you can cut this and tape it to your door, it can be very helpful.
LizAnne, I know you've got a few more slides here. Do you think we could wrap up just in the next couple of minutes so there's enough time we have time for questions?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just the one thing I want to talk about on this page is down at the bottom, optional personal protective clothing. It's in the middle column near the bottom. This, you want to evacuate with specific kind of things. A wool cap can cover your head from sparks and embers, eye protection or goggles. An N95 mask will help you breathe better. Leather work gloves, if a limb falls across the road and you have to move it out of the way while you're evacuating, having the leather gloves is good. You want to don't wear flip-flops as you're evacuating, wear hard-soled shoes. Cotton clothing is better than other clothing, which can actually, as embers hit it, it can melt. And a wool blanket you can drape over yourself if it's getting hot and you're trying to get out. And then real quickly on this last page, on the left-hand column, these are things that you can do as you're evacuating. They're listed in order of importance. And we had 8 hours this time when we evacuated, so we were able to make it through the whole list. But the top, you want to start at the top and work your way down. Believe me, when you're trying to evacuate, it's easy to panic and not think clearly. And this guide will walk you through what to do and how to get out safely and securely. And then the middle column is things you do right when you're evacuating. And last thing you do is if you're evacuating in 2 cars, do a final head count. There have been incidences where people have thought a person was in the other car and they were left behind because they ran back inside to get something. So do a final head count. But, and then the last section talks about if you're in your vehicle and you get stuck, what you should do if you're trapped on foot, which you definitely don't want to be in that situation, but it gives you some suggestions there. And if you can't get out, the fire's blocked your road and you're sheltering in your home, these are concrete steps you can do there. And last is this book, Surviving Wildfire. This woman lost her home to fire in Colorado. She talks to you about what to look for in your insurance policy. And if you do lose your home, step by step, how to make your way through the process. And for more information, here are the Prepared Not Scared guide is the one we just went through. And these are other things. I'll leave this page up, so if you want to jot down notes, you can.
Perfect.
So that's sort of my presentation.
That was really great, LizAnne. Thank you. I know if we were in front of a live room right now, you'd be hearing a thorough round of applause. I'll applause for you. Thank you. So we've got just a little more time and a few questions to get through here. So the first one, I think you kind of mentioned it as we were going through the slides, but it's from Peter Haworth. And he says, my house is stucco. Is that less likely to burn than other types of construction?
Stucco is good. It's a good material to build in. It's what our house is done in, and that is a very good fire-safe material.
Okay, good to know. The next question is from Diane and George. They ask, how did you save your home in Bonny Doon? And what about decks in the zero zone?
We have a deck around our pool that's redwood that when we can afford to, we're going to replace it. My own solution to that was, which is I got 5-gallon water jugs and I lined them up every 2 feet where they intersect with my house. My theory being that if the deck catches on fire and burns towards the house, that it will melt the plastic, it'll dump out the water and hopefully extinguish the fire before it wicks up onto my house. That is not a scientific method, but that's what I did until it makes me sleep better at night. I don't know if it would actually work, but if you can replace wooden deckings, Trex is plastic, it can melt, but you know, if you look for alternate decking materials, that would be the best.
Got it. And then to the other part of the question about how did you save your home in Bonny Doon? Now you actually evacuated, right? You weren't on your property with, you know, pumping water or anything like that, right?
We have in our pool, we have a submersible hose that we can put in, which is plumbed up to our roof, and we have fire hose up there. We also put in our own PVC misting system under our eaves, and it doesn't put out a lot of water, but we have a 14,000 gallon pool and now 8,000 gallon holding tank, water holding tank, and a 5,000 gallon holding tank. So we left our mister on, which misted the 5 feet directly around our house. We've also done the 5 feet perimeter around our house, and we came back, it was fine.
That's all a very impressive number of improvements. And so John D. Gums wants to know, so how much of this all cost, all these investments in making your home fire safe?
Well, again, we've been working on this since 2008 when we had the Martin fire. So we've been doing it a little bit at a time. This year, we replaced our roof, which was a big expense. It was time, and I'm really glad it was done before the fire started. But pruning away vegetation from your house, taking out lath, putting in the screening to keep the embers from getting into your house and your vents, those are all relatively inexpensive projects. And you know, the idea is start from your roof, work down your walls, clear the 5 feet, and just do what you can as you can afford it. And hopefully you'll never have to face it, or hopefully you'll have enough time to complete that work before you have to confront a wildfire.
Right. So it sounds like many of the most impactful improvements are ones you can do with just a little hard work.
And sweeping off your roof, if you have a roof you can get up on, that's free, and that's probably one of the most important things you can do.
Interesting. I've just got a couple more questions that were submitted online. From Bill Cook, he says, lightning is inevitable. I don't think anyone could have designed housing placement to be more impossible to evacuate. There will be no measurable change to our roads in that regard ever. We currently have one thermal imaging camera near the county. It's stationary, does not rotate, and it's not aimed in our direction. One more is proposed on a pole at the end of the pier. Please discuss thermal imaging cameras that rotate on towers or drones, homeowners association scale, linked reverse 911 local fire departments, and drone idea being on a neighborhood or drainage basis. Folks should be given the opportunity to evacuate as soon as possible and with the earliest possible detection.
Yeah, I don't have specific information about that. I know PG&E is talking about putting in, I believe they're talking about putting in some thermal imaging. They do have video cameras now throughout the county, and they're putting in more. So I know that PG&E is interested in doing this work because I don't know if any of the fire organizations are doing that. I haven't heard that they are, but it is an important piece, because if you can catch a fire early, it's much easier to deal with than once they get 100 acres or more, then they become tougher to fight.
Yeah, that's a great point, LizAnne. And Bill, I was speaking with Steve Kovacs, who's the fire chief for Branson 40 Fire and Scotts Valley Fire, and we discussed a number of policy changes that could be made. And definitely early cameras that are attached to cell phone towers or watch towers that are already out there, or pretty much, you know, as many, the more the better. So I think this is definitely a case where a penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and it's worthwhile for our community to invest in more of these in thermal imaging cameras.
I do have one more comment, and that's regarding drones. Lots of people in Bonny Doon have drones that they use for their own just entertainment, but do not fly drones during fires. If somebody put up a drone in Bonny Doon, the helicopters would be grounded. They wouldn't be dumping water. The aerial surveying couldn't be done. It's just, whatever you do not fly a personal drone. I mean, you could cost people their homes by doing that. So take that very seriously, and please, please, please don't fly your drones.
Yeah. I have a question from Judy Gunstra, who says, there seems to be an official allowance for the lighting of warming fires when the temperature gets below 50 degrees. This was an official communication from Ian Larkin. There was some language cautioning those who lit a warming fire to not let it spread, and that sounds like a potential disaster. A brush fire can quickly spread. How can we, concerned citizens, change this policy? Judy, do you know anything about that, LizAnne? Did you want to comment?
I believe I read on one of the social media pages that they had rescinded that policy through the end of the year, and that warming fires were no longer being allowed the remainder of this year. As far as an overall policy change, I think that's more something that would have to be discussed with CAL FIRE and the county to do that. I'm for not having warming fires in the summer, but I believe that they are banned through the rest of this year.
Interesting, yeah. And I would certainly look into changing that policy as well. I mean, I think, you know, of course, then there's the requirement of enforcement for something like that. I think probably the best option for reducing the risk of warming fires getting out of hand is to reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness, living in our wildland area, and creating more housing options. Just, you know, discuss this at length, but putting, whether it's pallet shelters, tiny homes on county property, for example, at the Emmeline Health Complex, and also creating more intentional communities in other places so that we can get people out of those areas where there's a lot of trees. I know driving up Highway 9 recently, it's been alarming to see how many people are living in that space. And so we really need to create alternatives. And we have a question here from Peter Haworth, who says, "This is all great information, but the bigger issue for me is that the state should be doing a lot more forestry management to help prevent these disastrous fires from starting in the first place. Do you know of any efforts to start the process?"
Yeah, there is a lot going on at the legislative level. It's being approached from home hardening point of view, from doing controlled burns to deal with it. But the area insurance companies are at play in it because, you know, they don't want to lose the insurance market of doing home insurance, but it needs to be safer for homes. So this is being approached from multiple directions at the state level to kind of come up with a comprehensive overview of there's confusing home hardening guidelines in different states. Planning departments think of it one way, CAL FIRE thinks of it another way. So they're working at the state level to get one sort of cohesive overall plan that can serve as a guideline and then be worked down at the county level too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot that we can be proactive about as a county. You know, there's a recent civil grand jury report came out just in July, performed by our local civil grand jury, saying that our county is really quite uninformed, unprepared, and you know, in many cases, actually breaking state laws as related to fire. So we need to do a lot more in order to, you know, as you say, greater forestry management and reducing fuel. Right now, there is no requirement, there's no ordinance in our county that says that we need to manage county right-of-ways to, you know, as you were talking about, LizAnne, with private roads, but, you know, be clear of brush and, you know, potentially act as fire breaks. So I think we can look into better maintaining county right-of-ways, absolutely. Should start with county property. And then, of course, we need to look at ways we can just get more people to help with the problem. You might have heard that our state was, you know, typically we rely quite a bit on convict fire brigades. I believe there was 193 normally in California. We were down by half with this current round of fires because we let a large number of people out to reduce the risk of COVID. Now, we can look at, you know, I very much believe as a county, we should be looking at ways to increase those kinds of brigades. I think we should look at programs that allow the homeless who are receiving exactly the kind of shelter as we just described from the county to have an opportunity to work on those fire brigades. We've seen that many of the most successful programs that deal with homelessness here in our county are ones that provide work opportunities. And I think that this is a great opportunity where we can take two problems, homelessness and fire safety, and actually put them together for a good solution and better managing county right-of-ways. So that's something I'm committed to do as your next supervisor. All right, let's see. And I think we have another anonymous attendee who said community removal of eucalyptus, any grant money available. So definitely, I think a program like I just described could certainly address reducing dangerous eucalyptus brush, limbing up, and maybe even removing the trees entirely. LizAnne, do you know about any state grant money that's available for these kinds of programs?
There is some. It's in constant flux because of the economy of the state and funding sources, et cetera. But California has Santa Cruz and San Mateo County have I think it's called a CWPP. It's a thing where the fire departments get together and look at the entire county, and they identify projects that are high risk, and they do this, I think, every 5 years. They go through and revisit it. And eucalyptus groves are high on that list. And so when funding becomes available, they go to this document and they look at the priorities they've set up. And as funding becomes available, they work their way through them. It is a published document. I don't have the information right now, but I will email it to you in case you want to share it with people. They can take a look at it. It's broken up by parts of the county, so you can look in your area and see what projects have been identified as high risk, and as funding becomes available, they'll be working on them.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, it is 7:05, and I want to bring us to a close to be respectful of everyone's time. A big thank you again, LizAnne, for sharing this information tonight. I know I feel really motivated. My parents actually live in Corralitos, and our home there was almost destroyed from the Summit fire. We were all looking around just last weekend at, geez, maybe we need to do something, but what? And I feel like now I know what. So I know I'm going to take this presentation to them, and we'll start our work list and use that checklist. I hope everyone in the audience feels the same sense of empowerment tonight. We'll take all these resources that you shared, and we'll email them to the attendee list. I'll also post them on my own website under the fire page. That's manukoenig.com/fire. And I hope you all enjoyed tonight's program. And one more round of applause for LizAnne. Thank you.
Okay, good night.
All right, good night, everyone.